holiday ever.
The clubbing holiday. Practically a rite of passage for British teenagers. The type of holiday where you meet an Irish lad in a club called Jumping Jacks after being ushered into bars by reps because you're a group of girls in very little dresses. Where, amongst the distinct style of young Brits on holiday, you will see a glimpse between the shots and the fish bowls of a hen or stag do. When you gush for years to come about being picked up by a guy in the middle of a club and having a ring taken off of his hand and placed on your own when Single Ladies plays. It's videos of group drinks, salt then shot then lime, and sitting on the ground outside the club at God knows in the morning listening to the life story of someone you don't even know the name of. The type of holidays that are about drinking, fun, and sex. The type of holidays I've seen portrayed well in two situations: Generation 3 of Skins and the film How to Have Sex. And that film is what I want to chat about today. Created by writer-director Molly Manning Walker, How to Have Sex follows three best friends on a post-GCSE trip to Malia full of clubs, day drinking, fish bowls, and Tara's journey to losing her virginity. Tara is our protagonist and is accompanied by her two best friends, Sky and Em, on what is branded as the best holiday ever. However, soon enough they meet Paddy and Badger, two guys on their own clubbing holiday, and Tara's journey turns from having the best holiday ever to a complicated tale of consent. Ultimately, the film leads to the heartbreaking sexual assault of Tara by Paddy and depicts the complicated emotional reactions felt by Tara and the rest of the group surrounding sex, consent, and intimacy. So let's delve into how this film went from concept to an 8-minute standing ovation at Cannes Film Festival to being a vehicle for conversations surrounding consent. Part 1: How to Have Sex came to be. It only feels right to start talking about How to Have Sex by talking about the creative mind behind the project. Molly Manning Walker, the writer and director of the film, talked about her motivations behind creating this project on the MUBI podcast. So I went on a bunch of these holidays when I was that age, when I was 16, 17, and I connected with some old schoolmates and realized that it had quite a huge impact. It was one of these experiences in particular that Manning Walker credits as the genesis of the film. When in Magaluf on a bar crawl, she had an experience that inspired the blowjob scene in the film, where Badger volunteers for a game without knowing what it entails. Molly Manning Walker recounts being shocked by this experience, but also feeling as if those around her were all enjoying the moment. It is not until she later reconnected with these friends that she realized that everyone else also felt uncomfortable too. This already suggests the complex conversations to come in this film surrounding the personal versus group attitudes towards sex and how social pressures can influence the culture of sex and intimacy that is internalized by young people. How to Have Sex is Molly Manning Walker's debut feature film and won the Uncertain Regard Award at the Cannes Film Festival and the European Discovery Award at the 36th European Film Academy Awards. And in 2024, she was nominated for 2 BAFTAs: Outstanding British Film and Outstanding Debut by a British Writer, Director, or Producer. Alongside this, as a result of the film, McKenna-Bruce, who plays Tara, received the Rising Star BAFTA in 2024. After being written largely over lockdown, the film consisted of a 7-week shoot on location in Malia in 2022 as the season was winding down. As it was the end of the season, it has been noted by cast members that many of the scenes, especially in the pool or sea, were particularly cold to film, and 200 British extras were flown in to give How to Have Sex that authentic Brits on holiday look that it captures so well. But as much as the technical aspects of creating the project are important, I think it's also interesting to consider why the cast themselves were drawn to the film. Our 6 vocal characters are McKenna-Bruce as Tara, Samuel Bottomley as Paddy, Sean Thomas as Badger, Laura Peake as Sky, Enver Lewis as Em, and Lauren Ambler as Paige. In an interview with MTV UK, Enver Lewis said, "It was so open and honest and raw, so you just you knew it was going to be powerful from the second you walked into the audition room." Similarly, Samuel Bottomley has noted the importance of the voice in the film. I think what definitely caught my eye straight away is the language we used in it and how it felt like it was being spoke to me from a voice of my generation, a really youthful voice. And I think that's what I took away from it when I first read the script. He also notes that he hopes people take away from the film and his character Paddy specifically reflections on consent and their own behaviors. That's what I took away from the script, and that's what people around me that have seen the film are taking away, taking that conversation home. In turn, Mia McKenna-Bruce's love for the script was born from having younger sisters around the age of these characters, as she notes. It was a film that I wish I had had when I was younger, and I've got two younger sisters, so it is something that I really wanted them to watch. So I thought to get them to watch it, I'll try and be in it. In considering both what drew the cast to the project and what drew Molly Manning Walker to put the story on paper, it seems there is a yearning in common for an authentic representation of issues of intimacy, social pressures, and consent that is handled in a complex and nuanced way. After all, when you're 16, sex seems like one of the most important things in the world. It's often what a lot of your social world revolves around. Who is having sex and who with? Who isn't having sex? Who wants to have sex with who? It's all part of the rumor mill. It's a constant conversation that teenagers and young adults have. Yet rarely do these conversations consider the emotional stakes of sex or the social pressures that can create the perfect atmosphere for an assault to occur unnoticed. As Olivia Ann Cleary suggests for Time, sometimes the loudest screams are silent. And that's just one of the startling realities of life and girlhood which How to Have Sex explores. As we are about to dive further into the film, if you have not yet watched How to Have Sex, it is available through MUBI, which is available to watch on Amazon Prime. Part 2: The Press and Critics. Wendy Ide for The Guardian gave the film a 5-star review, noting it as a platform for both Molly Manning Walker and Mia McKenna-Bruce to be breakout stars in British cinema. Reflecting on the film and its brilliant use of setting, sound, and acting, Ide notes that Tara's increasing discomfort about the way the holiday plays out and the sex that eventually happens is revealed not so much in dialogue. The whole point of the film is that she and girls her age lack the crucial vocabulary to talk about their needs and experiences. But in McKenna Bruce's mercurially expressive face, she is transfixing. Clarice Luffrey's 4-star review for The Independent also highlights the amazing performances in this film. Peak, as Sky suggests, an almost subconscious kind of toxicity. She's the friend whose harmless jokes and occasional heedlessness are secretly a way to keep someone in their place. Lewis, as M, is the empathetic counterbalance who can sense things she can't quite explain and feels powerless to intervene in. When Badger starts to quietly distance himself from his more forward friend Paddy, Samuel Bottomley, the feeling of this uncomfortable history between the pair leaves room for both complicity and cluelessness. What isn't said in How to Have Sex and what isn't openly felt is the stuff that really hurts. And Barbara Ellen's response to the film in an article in The Guardian suggests perhaps how we are failing young people by not having these conversations of consent. Why did How to Have Sex break my heart so much? Maybe it's because, like an idiot, I thought the issue of sexual consent was, if not sorted, then at least in the recovery position. That savvy consent literate younger generations had a chance. Now doubts have stirred up from the deep. We may even be asking too much of the young, presuming that, like ideological automatons, they can navigate a muddied sexual consent landscape most of us would have found difficult at their age and might even struggle with as adults. These responses suggest the way the film sparks conversations surrounding consent and how it can be used to disrupt current social attitudes towards sex that exist. Part 3: A Conversation on Intimacy. The film begins with what feels like an adrenaline filled utopia with no rules or limits, where no one can tell the teens what to do and the party never stops. But in the film, as in life, that is not sustainable. As we see through Tara, emotionally, she is navigating a much more fraught landscape that she feels the need to conceal or push aside so as not to ruin the atmosphere of the group. The film does not focus on sexual assaults that only occur in one manner or specifically in this setting, although those are the scenes the narrative moves through. It works hard not to demonize party culture as a whole. As such, there are multiple scenes that can be read as sexual assault. These include both Tara and Paddy's beach scene and the scene later on in the bed in the apartment, but they also include Badger's scene that we've mentioned previously on stage where he volunteered drunk for a game without knowing that was going to involve sexual acts. And it's important to consider this film and the topics and conversations brought up within it as a whole, as the sexual assault scenes do not exist in a vacuum. They are part of a narrative and cultural tapestry woven throughout this film. As such, the importance of this film is not simply the sexual assault scenes it portrays, but in its depiction of social pressures, social environment, and the lack of emotional awareness and vocabulary around intimacy. The social attitudes and messaging that many young people receive, which creates atmosphere of social pressure, can be seen represented for the casual, do it for the plot attitudes both Sky and Paddy seem to harbor about sex. At the start of the film, we find out that Tara is still a virgin through a taunting, nonchalant conversation with Sky, where she points out that if she cannot lose her virginity on a holiday where everyone is looking for sex, then she is ostensibly a lost cause. And Tara responds in kind, adding humor to the situation by proclaiming, "No, I can't die a virgin." But this interaction showcases how they are all part of this culture that shames virginity and creates a rush to have sex for the sake of having sex. Another example of Sky disregarding Tara's feelings about intimacy and sex is when she pushes Tara away from Badger, who she seems to have a genuine connection and rapport with, in favor of Paddy. It is clear here for Sky that the goal is sex, not intimacy. This is reinforced when Sky tells Tara, who says she likes Badger, finds him funny, and finds him attractive, that she can do better based solely on looks. It appears as though Sky is not interested in Tara's feelings surrounding the boys, but rather is looking at sex as a type of social status. And this is seen in how Sky's outlook towards the whole holiday seems to revolve around sex. She actively showcases that to her, having the best holiday ever means having sex rather than spending time with her friends. As she says, "I love yous a lot, but none of us are gonna get laid if we just hang out with each other. Last night was a disaster." Referencing a night where they were seen having fun, dancing together, looking out for each other, and singing karaoke. I think one nuance to this is how when you're young, you take your friends for granted and can very quickly get caught up in ideas of sex and also just attention from people you find attractive. It's the desire to be desired that I think many of us are programmed to feel. However, that does not excuse how Sky seems like quite a preoccupied and toxic friend who would rather chase guys throughout this holiday than spend time with her friends that she proclaims to love. Next, something super important to me and something I have heard Molly Manning Walker talk about in interviews is the fact that this film showcases multiple different types of sexual assault and also is in constant conversation with consent. The scene that, as I've mentioned previously, inspired the film with Badger on stage receiving a public blowjob showcases how these events can occur without much chance to say no, as Badger volunteers without knowing what game he is volunteering for, only for it to be proclaimed as a sex game, and neither of the guys being asked whether they are okay with that whilst they are on stage, only for girls to quickly swarm the stage and engage Badger in a sexual act. In this situation, the opportunity for active and informed consent is completely removed, as A, he is drunk, and B, he did not know what he was volunteering for in the first place. And similarly, it is hard to say that he is not peer pressured into the experience, as there is the social setting of a huge crowd cheering them on. Additional to that is when Badger is called on stage for the game, he is told to prove himself this time after losing a game with Tara earlier in the day. And the next morning, when he wakes up, he proclaims that the worst bit is he can't remember anything. Whilst he seems sad about forgetting this because he proclaims it's quite possibly the best thing that's ever happened to him, we can speculate whether he actually felt this way or whether he is playing into the idea of sex and masculinity that young boys and teenagers and young men are packaged. This is a very interesting conversation surrounding consent that occurs without a word of it being spoken in the film. It is the context of the scene that is vitally important. Similarly, we also have Tara's experiences of assault explored, which in and of itself is an important depiction of consent because while she does technically say yes to Paddy, this is not freely given consent as she originally does say no. This scene is specifically shot so we as an audience focus on Tara's discomfort when Paddy continuously asks for consent when she doesn't respond, when she seems unsure. She's stiff. She looks as though she doesn't really know whether she wants to do this. And then, as we see the act itself acted out, she is grimacing and not actively participating throughout the assault. We essentially watch her endure this sexual encounter that she has been pressured and coerced into. But also in the beach scene up to the actual assault, we see Paddy frequently disregard Tara saying no when he throws her in the water, when she's frequently telling him no and to put her down. And then he also smacks her bum as they walk out of the ocean, which he claims he couldn't help. Throughout this scene, we continuously see Paddy have a distinct lack of ownership over his own actions and the effects of them. Mia McKenna-Bruce spoke on how she saw having conversations surrounding this scene as a real eye-opener. That's something that I didn't even really process when I was reading the script or when I filmed it. It's only when we were talking about it that I go, yeah, she actually said no so many times. And that just wasn't taken as her final answer. So why was yes the final answer and no wasn't? This hits so many important points about consent and also showcases how much education is lacking surrounding consent. In the same way that Molly Manning Walker said, for me, every woman I know has been sexually assaulted, and not every man I know would claim to have had that experience or to have been a perpetrator. So I think there's a real gap there in what people understand as assault. An assault is not only physically forcing someone to engage in a sexual activity, but it is any occasion where someone is not able to actively consent. And for anyone to consent, they must be in a situation where consent is freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific, meaning they have not been coerced into the act, their no has not been disregarded until it's a yes, meaning they are not in a context where saying no would cause them harm. They can retract their consent at any time. They know what acts they are specifically consenting to, and they are in a state where they can actively participate and give consent, aka they are not drugged, inebriated, or too drunk. The film discusses the topic of consent as this complex and ongoing conversation, rather than simply reducing it down to a yes or no issue. Something both Mia McKenna-Bruce and Molly Manning Walker have discussed frequently surrounding this film is the idea of enthusiastic consent. And that first beach scene with Paddy and Tara is the perfect example of what enthusiastic consent is not. Similarly, other members of the cast have discussed the conversation surrounding consent in the film and how they were actually aspects that drew them to the project in the first place. I can understand why these aspects of the project would appeal, as it is evident that Molly Manning Walker took the time to create a well developed and nuanced story. The navigation of intimacy and sexual assault, especially when you're young, is so hard. And we see this in Tara as she battles with her own emotions. It's evident she doesn't want to ruin the best holiday ever, trying to suppress her emotions about what has happened to her while also claw her way back to that loud, comedic, carefree girl that we see at the beginning of the film. How Mia McKenna-Bruce portrays Tara is in such a authentic way that it showcases both her vulnerability and her strength. I also think the weight of intimacy is something that hits like a ton of bricks in the second half of the film, especially as we stay with Tara throughout her story in Malia. And it's something that especially makes Sky seem like an uncaring friend. This was great writing to me because Sky is so focused on buying into the social pressures that surround them and having the best holiday ever that she does not see the emotional weight of intimacy, and as such makes us as an audience and Tara within the dynamic unwilling to trust her with the vulnerability of an assault. The dichotomy between Sky's attitude about Tara not coming home after a night out and the care with which a stranger regards Tara and adopts Tara after finding her without her friends on a night out is so telling. He asks if she's okay, asks where her friends are, absorbs her into the group, and even offers to give up her bed for her. In comparison, Em and Sky don't even realize that Tara is missing until the next morning, and even then they assume she is with the boys. And whilst Em and Badger are concerned for Tara, Sky is already busy congratulating her on having sex when she's not even sure that Tara is safe. The fun and focus in Fee's group on having a good holiday with friends is a glimpse at what Tara's best holiday ever could have been without the social pressures surrounding sex. I also think the effect this has on Badger and Tara's relationship is done in such a subtle but well executed way. Badger is there for Tara and recognizes in some way that she is hurting, walking her home early after a night out, and also just being able to sit in silence with her there as a comforting presence when they are usually both the people in a room cracking jokes at a mile a minute. And the fact that he recognizes that Paddy is a nightmare of a guy, whilst also in the same breath justifying his friendship and relationship to Paddy, gives an insight into the dynamic seen in male friendships often regarding sexual assault and violence. They are taught in a way to play up to sexually predatory behavior, not challenge it. Molly Manning Walker said, "It was really important that we don't lock men out of the conversation. I wanted men to recognize themselves in the characters, and although Badger is really fun and sweet, he fails Tara, and he doesn't stand up at the right moment. He kind of enables his mate to continue the behavior. And I think that's what we're trying to talk about. Don't assault people, that should be obvious, but let's talk about stuff with our friends. Let's care for other people. Let's make kindness more forefront in our lives." This also addresses the lads culture or boys will be boys culture that is used to excuse sexually predatory behavior because that's what people are told they can act like, allowing them both to be unaware of the effect of their actions, whilst also leaving them in a position where they don't know how to challenge this behavior from their friends. Within this conversation surrounding sexual assault and violence, I really respect how to Have Sex did not try and create the perfect victim. Tara is a young girl on holiday. She's wearing little bikinis, clubbing dresses, she's drinking a lot. And yet, the message in the film is that nothing she does, nothing she wears would ever mean that she deserves to be assaulted. Even in the airport scene with Tara and Em, where we start to get these pieces of Em recognizing that something wrong really did happen with Paddy, when Tara acknowledges that the second time they had sex didn't really count because she was asleep, for a second falls into a victim blaming mentality in a way where she tells Tara that she should have said something. However, this is quickly taken back, as it is first the response to Tara saying, "It's fine." But once Tara says this again, Em simply validates her entire experience of sexual assault by saying, "No, it's not." The validation of Tara's experience in that one sentence is paramount to the message of this film. Those scenes in the airport with Tara and Em are the things that I left the movie thinking about the most. It showcases the importance of young people to have the vocabulary to talk about consent, sex, intimacy without needing to live up to the social bravado surrounding sex. The complexities of Tara, Em's, and Sky's relationship explores this perfectly. On one side, you have Sky, who kind of embodies that bravado and that social attitude towards sex. And on the other side, we have Em, who attempts to be there for Tara and talk to Tara, even when neither of them have the vocabulary to describe what has happened or the complexities of consent, which truly showcases the beautiful bond they have as friends. The most beautiful shot of the film for me was when the girls are running to board their plane, and Tara stops, just like she stopped following Paddy down the strip when they were walking back from the beach after the first assault. However, unlike that scene, where Paddy keeps walking and leaves her alone, Em turns back and offers Tara her hand. They exit the film supporting each other, and we get a glimpse of Tara hollering and shouting in the same way that she did at the start of the film, suggesting how supporting each other and having these conversations can help to heal. And it also showcases Tara's strength. She is not a victim, she's a survivor, and she is clawing her way back to herself. The social and cultural understanding of sex and consent that exists is something we are responsible for. It's something we've reproduced for years. and it's something we must actively work to dismantle and challenge. This film, both in its messaging and its potential for social impact, is a great example of how to start those conversations. Part 4: Film as a Vehicle for Social Action. This film is a film meant to start conversations, and it has. In fact, the existence of this film is due to the evident need of these conversations surrounding sex, consent, and intimacy for young people. To finance this film, which was often being disregarded due to there already being media like sex education for young people, focus groups were held with students who were given the sexual assault scenes from the film to read and discuss. McKenna-Bruce talks of how a lot of these young people did not see the assault scenes as an assault. A lot of them were like, well, she shouldn't have been drunk. She should have been wearing more clothes. She's putting herself in that situation. A lot of them were young girls saying that as well, which proved that there was and is an issue that Molly Manning Walker was actively trying to push against with this film. Of note, then, is the rife messaging that is still taken, internalized, and reproduced by young people that there must be the perfect victim, or else we blame the victim or survivor for their own assault. I've commended in this video Molly Manning Walker for moving away from this narrative of the perfect victim in the film, and I think the fact that these young people reproduce this idea is further evidence that we have to proactively challenge ideas such as this surrounding sex and sexual assault. Interesting enough, the film is now re entering spaces with young people, as in February of 2024, MUBI released a press release saying that the film will be taken into schools. The film has partnered with the Schools Consent Project, which is a charity that provides workshops by legally qualified volunteers surrounding the laws of sex and consent. In the press release, the founder of the Schools Consent Project, Kate Parker, is quoted saying, "Our joint goal is to normalize conversations about consent so that the next generation moves through the world experiencing better, safer interactions, and I'm excited to see the real world impact this partnership will have on the attitudes and behavior of young people." In the same press release, Molly Manning Walker is quoted discussing her reaction to the film's partnering with the Schools Consent Project. "It's really a dream come true to be getting our films into schools. Watching it be used as a learning tool for consent has been the most emotional part of the journey for me. As we've taken the film around the world, we've established that most women have had experiences like Tara. Now we get the opportunity to help teenagers navigate sexual experiences differently. I wish I had it when I was a teenager." The partnership comes after the Schools Consent Project hosted a one-off workshop in December of 2023 where young people watched the film and then afterwards discussed the assault scenes. This film proved to be a successful conduit for open, honest, and raw conversations with young people surrounding sexual assault, violence, consent, and intimacy. From here, the Schools Consent Project utilized this experience of the one off workshop to create a model of workshops to take into schools in partnership with the film. Molly Manning Walker also returned to her own secondary school to discuss with students there the topics in the film. Some of the quoted responses from the students are, "From the beginning, it felt like it could be you there. It didn't feel fictional at all. It doesn't feel fabricated. When you turn 16, the age of consent, there's a lot of pressure to have sex, and not everyone wants that at such a naive age." It is evident that the film is sparking conversations, not just about what legally constitutes consent, but about the emotional weight of sex, intimacy, and peer pressure. This, for me, is a brilliant moment in British cinema, showcasing how the arts can be used as a vehicle to start conversations surrounding social change. I personally am very excited to see what Molly Manning Walker has in store next and to see more of these nuanced conversations surrounding consent enter TV and film directed at young people. We cannot and should not be afraid to have these conversations or create these stories that are so realistically rooted in raw authenticity. How to Have Sex is proof of what a merit these conversations are to film.